You people always try to sneak in, don't you? Lauren Pierce didn't whisper it. She didn't flinch, didn't even blink. Her voice sliced through the quiet of the first-class cabin like it belonged there more than he did. She held Jordan Hayes's ticket between two fingers like it was something foul, something beneath her. Then, without hesitation, she tore it straight down the middle. The sound was soft, but the message was loud. You're not welcome here. Before we dive into the story, where are you watching from? Have you ever been shut out of a place you paid for, just because of how you look? Ever stayed quiet, letting your actions do the talking? Then this story is for you. Drop a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. Now, let's get back to the story. Jordan didn't move, not at first. He looked down at the two torn halves of his Pinnacle airboarding pass. Seat 2A, window, and then up at the woman who'd ripped it with such contempt. He was dressed simply. Dark jeans, a casual navy blazer, and a white Oxford shirt. No logo, no status symbol. Just the quiet comfort of a man who didn't need to prove who he was. But standing there in the aisle, surrounded by murmurs and glances, he felt 18 again, the same helpless burn behind the ribs. Back then. A gate agent had laughed in his face when he asked about a business class upgrade, waving him away with the same words. You don't belong here. And now, decades later, it was happening again, except this time. The gate agent wasn't behind a counter. She was standing just a few feet away in a flight attendant uniform, backlit by the dim glow of the aircraft's overhead lighting. Lauren smirked. If you want to fly, sir, you'll need to take your seat in the rear of the aircraft, or you're welcome to exit and speak with gate staff. She didn't wait for his response. Her attention shifted to the white couple seated nearby. Claire and Nathan Whitaker. Claire was already draping a cream shawl over her lap, eyes fixed on Jordan like he was a trespasser, not a passenger. Nathan refused to look at him at all. Instead, he leaned into Claire, murmuring something that made her smirk. Jordan had caught the tail end of it. This is what happens when you let anyone buy a ticket. Claire had paid Lauren a bribe. 7 crisp $100 bills slipped between a folded menu. A transaction captured earlier by a passenger's smartwatch. Though Jordan didn't know that yet, Jordan cleared his throat. I have a confirmed seat in 2A. That's my seat. Ethan Cole, the younger flight attendant shadowing Lauren, stepped in awkwardly. We've had a system glitch. Sir, your name doesn't appear in the manifest anymore. You may have been downgraded. His eyes darted nervously toward Lauren, then back to Jordan. It happens, especially on days like this. Jordan's voice remained level. On days like what? Exactly? Ethan didn't answer. The tension was tangible now. The cabin was nearly full, mostly white business travelers in crisp suits, heading out from Chicago after a weekend finance summit. The Pinnacle Airjet, a sleek Airbus A320, was grounded for weather delay. Snow dusted the tarmac outside, but inside, the air was still, too still. The flickering light above 2A added a kind of stage effect to the scene, casting Jordan's face in shadow, sharpening every line of the unfolding confrontation. He took a slow breath and stepped forward. Let me see the seating log, he said. Lauren held up a tablet. You're not on here. Mr. Hayes, he said, locking eyes with her. She nodded, almost condescendingly. Well, Mr. Hayes, I'll ask you to take your things and return to the main cabin. Jordan didn't budge. He looked at the tablet screen briefly. His name was there, but faint, faded, like a ghost entry. The kind of data loss that could only be explained by a glitch, or by someone tampering with the system after check-in. From the other side of the cabin, a woman stood. Sophia Alvarez, 50, veteran journalist with eyes that missed nothing, was already recording. She'd been on dozens of flights, seen more subtle slights than she could count. But this was deliberate. She raised her phone higher, making no effort to hide it. "I'm filming this," she said aloud, "because I've seen this story before, and it always ends the same way. Unless someone exposes it." Jordan glanced at her, then back to the crew. He didn't ask her to stop. Behind him, another passenger stirred. Malcolm Reed, 48, tall, broad-shouldered, quiet. He had been silent for most of the boarding process, tucked into seat 3C, but now, he rose. His tone was firm, composed. "I saw Mr. Hayes board with a ticket for 2A, Malcolm said. "I watched him check in. If you're removing him, you better explain why." Lauren's smile slipped. "Sir, please return to your seat. This does not concern you." Malcolm didn't move. "It concerns all of us when this kind of thing keeps happening." The murmurs started then, passengers whispering, filming, questioning. A winter storm might have grounded the plane, but something else was happening now. Something heavier than snow. The unease wasn't about turbulence. It was about truth. The kind that shoves its way to the front of the cabin and dares everyone else to look away. Jordan tapped his phone and walked a few steps down the aisle, speaking softly into the receiver. "Nia," he said, "I need you to do 3 things. First, pull up my booking details for Pinnacle Flight 6472, Seat 2A. Second, start preparing a formal media statement about a potential discrimination incident on board. Third," he paused. "Third, don't tell anyone who I am. Not yet." He ended the call and turned back around, his expression calm. Unreadable, but his eyes burned. Not with anger, with memory. With the kind of memory that doesn't fade. Like when he was 25 and humiliated by a flight crew who offered him water while they served others champagne. Or when he was 30 and a gate agent took one look at his ID and asked, "Are you sure this ticket wasn't booked by someone else?" Or when he was 35 and pulled aside for security after boarding, only to be allowed through with an apology after the first-class section filled up with less melanin. Now here he was, CEO of the very airline, watching it unfold again. Claire turned toward him then, sipping champagne. "You know, this seat really is more suited to someone with, well, presence." She didn't say it, but she didn't have to. Jordan stared at her, then at Nathan, who finally looked up. There was no remorse in his expression, just boredom, like this was all an inconvenience that should be swept away. Behind them, Sophia raised her voice again. "The internet's already seen this, folks, and they're not impressed." Jordan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You're right," he said quietly. "They have. And in 30 minutes, they would see much more." Jordan didn't move. Not when Ethan Cole stepped forward again. Not when Lauren Pierce called for security. The torn boarding pass still lay in 2 halves at his feet, a quiet but unmistakable symbol of what this moment truly was. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the first-class cabin before you make this a bigger issue than it needs to be," Lauren said with a crisp smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her voice was polite, but it carried that sharp undertone Jordan had heard too many times before. The one that said we decide who belongs here. Not you. You've already been downgraded due to a system error. Arguing won't change that. Claire Whitaker chuckled under her breath, pretending to scroll her phone. Nathan, still silent beside her, let out a slow exhale and glanced toward the window. Like the scene unfolding in front of him was a delay he didn't have time for. "Glitches happen," Ethan added quickly, "especially when flights are overbooked. And with the snowstorm and the finance conference, we've had a lot of rerouting. It's nothing personal." Jordan looked at him, expression unreadable. "It always is." He turned slightly, eyes moving across the faces around him, passengers who watched with interest, discomfort, or quiet approval. Then he stepped back, not in retreat, but to pull out his phone. He tapped it once and spoke quietly. "Nia, they're escalating. Get a statement ready. No names. Just a summary of what's happening." On the other end, Nia Brooks, his longtime assistant, was already recording timestamps and preparing documents. "And Nia," he added, "reach out to HR. Tell them to flag Lauren Pierce and Ethan Cole in the employee system. Lock the records. I want full access when I land." Then he ended the call. "Sir, if you don't comply, I'll be forced to have you removed," Lauren said. Stepping slightly closer, her badge gleaming under the cabin lights. Jordan didn't respond. He turned toward the cabin door, where the security call would undoubtedly bring uniformed staff, likely unprepared for what they were walking into. Sofia Alvarez, still filming from her aisle seat, raised her voice just loud enough for everyone around her to hear. "This isn't a misunderstanding. This is exactly how discrimination looks in a suit and tie." The tension snapped tighter. A few more phones came out, quietly lifted into position, behind Jordan. Malcolm Reed stood again. "I'm going to say this clearly," he said. "This man had a confirmed seat. I saw him check in myself." Lauren's eyes narrowed. "Are you with him?" Malcolm's reply was slow and deliberate. "I'm with the truth." Ethan looked visibly uncomfortable now. His earlier bravado was gone, replaced by nervous glances toward Sofia and the passengers starting to murmur. "The system's glitching," he repeated, but it sounded hollow. "He's not on the manifest." "Then show us," Malcolm replied, crossing his arms. "Let everyone see what you see." Ethan hesitated, then turned the tablet screen toward them. Jordan's name was faint but visible, partially grayed out as if deactivated. Not missing, just marked inactive. "That's a manual override," Malcolm said immediately. "Not a glitch. I didn't touch anything." Ethan mumbled, "Ask Lauren." The air in the cabin grew colder than the snowstorm outside. Meanwhile, Sofia glanced at her phone and raised her eyebrows. "Video's already got over 20,000 views. You might want to call this off before the damage spreads." Jordan remained calm, his voice low, steady. "They won't stop it, but they will see it." He leaned slightly toward Ethan. "You skipped your DEI training, didn't you?" Ethan blinked. "What?" "Diversity, equity, inclusion. Your bias training," Jordan said, never raising his voice. "You were exempt, weren't you?" Ethan looked at Lauren, who stayed quiet. Then, reluctantly, he nodded. "The union. They filed an objection, said we could opt out if we already had prior experience." "Which you don't," Jordan said. Sofia was still filming. The murmuring in the cabin had grown louder, more focused. Claire looked around, visibly annoyed. "Why is everyone making such a fuss? He's not even dressed for first class." That was it. That one sentence pulled the last breath from the room. Jordan turned slowly toward her. "And how exactly is someone supposed to dress for basic dignity?" Claire didn't respond. Her smugness cracked just slightly, just enough for everyone to see. Then a younger passenger, seated behind Sofia, leaned forward and whispered, "I think I got something." He tapped his smartwatch and showed Sofia a short video. In it, Lauren could be seen discreetly accepting a folded menu from Claire, just minutes before the incident began. From the side angle, visible for a moment, a stack of bills. 7, maybe 800s, clear as daylight. Sofia's eyebrows rose. "Send me that," she said, within seconds. The footage was uploading alongside the live video stream. Jordan didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Lauren's posture shifted, the defensive sharpness in her tone now layered with panic. "That proves nothing," she said. "Maybe I was being tipped for good service." Malcolm laughed once, short and hard. "Not before takeoff. You weren't—" Then came another blow. Sophia scrolled through her phone and opened a report. "Ethan," she said, turning her screen toward him, "this wasn't your first incident. You were cited last year for profiling a Latino passenger in row 12. Complaint was filed. But guess who buried it?" She turned slowly toward Lauren. Silence. Jordan's memory drifted, uninvited, to age 30, when a flight attendant had pulled him aside, saying his boarding pass didn't match his look. That humiliation stayed with him like ink in the margins. He looked now at Ethan, whose hands were shaking. "You were scared of losing your job," Jordan said. "I get that, but fear doesn't justify participation in prejudice." Ethan looked like he wanted to respond, but nothing came. "This isn't going away," Jordan added, "and neither am I." Lauren crossed her arms. "Fine. You want to make this a scene? Go ahead. But you're not sitting in that seat." "You're right," Jordan said. "I'm not. Not until the truth sits there with me." And with that, he turned, not toward the back of the cabin, but toward his phone. One tap, one message, and in that moment, the tide began to turn. The cameras were still rolling, but what came next would be far bigger than footage. It would shake the very core of the airline, and the woman who tore his ticket was about to learn just how far that tear would reach. Ethan's hand hovered, uncertain, before finally holding out his palm. "ID. Please. We need to verify you're even who you say you are." Jordan Hayes didn't flinch. He reached into the inner pocket of his blazer and pulled out his wallet with slow, deliberate movement. The motion was calm, controlled, but it carried weight, as if every inch of it had been rehearsed 1,000 times across a lifetime of being doubted. He handed over the ID without a word. Ethan took it, studied it briefly, then turned toward Lauren. "His name does match the record. Jordan Hayes, Chicago address, and the ticket matches." Lauren didn't even look. "The ticket's torn," she snapped. "And he wasn't on the manifest until 10 minutes ago. System still says inactive. He must have had someone change it after boarding." Her words were sharp, designed to sting, and they did. Jordan stared at her, the fury rising inside him. But it wasn't loud. It was steady, heavy, the kind of fury that knows how to wait its turn. Claire leaned sideways in her seat, eyeing him like he was a nuisance that wouldn't leave. "Let's not waste more time. There's no need to escalate." Nathan finally broke his silence, muttering, "Some people think just having a seat means they're entitled to the whole plane." That earned a glare from Malcolm, who had returned to his seat but remained alert, posture rigid, ready. Jordan looked around the cabin, taking in the weight of each glance, some curious, some sympathetic, some judgmental. He met Sophia's eyes as she filmed from her aisle seat, her lens unwavering. The silence was thick. Then Jordan spoke, voice low but unmissable. "You want proof?" He took a breath, then reached for a sleek black card holder and pulled out a Pinnacle Air corporate ID, his name, title, and a small silver crest embedded near the corner. He didn't flash it or raise his voice. He simply held it toward Ethan, who stared, then blinked, then mouthed something silent. Lauren stepped forward quickly, snatched the ID from Ethan's hands, and looked for herself. And there it was, Jordan Hayes, Chief Executive Officer, Pinnacle Air, the same airline they were working for, the same company logo stitched into her own uniform sleeve. "No," Lauren whispered, suddenly pale. This has to be fake." "It's not," Jordan said. still calm. And now that you've torn the ticket of your own CEO, accepted a bribe, and lied to your own manifest, I suggest you think carefully about what comes next. Claire let out a nervous laugh. You can't be serious. Nathan straightened, finally rattled. This is some kind of setup. Jordan turned his gaze to them. You paid a bribe to take a seat from a confirmed passenger. You mocked that passenger. And now, you're panicking because that passenger isn't who you thought he was. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. I've spent months reading complaints on Reddit about discrimination on our flights. I've spent weeks trying to decide how deep the problem goes. And I chose today, this flight, to find out for myself. Congratulations. You just made that decision very easy. Ethan took a step back, his face flushed with shame. I didn't know. You knew enough to follow her lead, Jordan replied, and enough to try to erase my name from the system. Then came the flood. Sophia lifted her phone again. We just got an anonymous leak, she announced. A group chat between crew members. Lauren told Ethan to deactivate a problem passenger's reservation before he even boarded. She tilted her phone so the screen faced the aisle. The screenshots were clear, Lauren's name at the top, her words unfiltered. Deactivate him. He doesn't fit the cabin vibe. Ethan's response, done. A hush swept the cabin. Even the passengers who had stayed quiet were shifting now, whispers passing between rows. Jordan didn't look at the screen. He didn't need to. He was looking at Lauren, whose face had drained of all its color. Is that your idea of hospitality? He asked. Or leadership? Lauren's lips trembled. My son needs tuition. I'm not like Claire. I'm not rich. You sold your dignity for $700, Jordan said, not with scorn, but something deeper, sadness. And you targeted the very kind of person you swore to treat with respect when you signed your contract. A few rows back, a middle-aged man in a blazer stood up. Excuse me, Mr. Hayes, he said gently. I'm a hedge fund advisor. I believe your company has been partially financed by Stonebridge Capital. Jordan turned to him, nodding. That's correct. Well, the man said, adjusting his glasses, that would mean this gentleman, he gestured at Nathan, should disclose that his firm, Whitaker Holdings, owns a minority stake in Stonebridge, which financed Pinnacle's last fleet expansion. He looked directly at Nathan. You didn't just bribe your way into a better seat. You leveraged your company's indirect investment to assert power over someone you didn't recognize. Jordan raised an eyebrow. Is that true? Nathan didn't answer. Claire opened her mouth, then closed it again. Sophia stepped forward. It gets worse. A former crew member just DM'd me. Said Lauren has a pattern of burying bias complaints, dozens of them. All ignored. She paused. They were sent to corporate, but they never made it past her. Jordan slowly nodded. So this isn't a bad moment. It's a bad system. He stepped to the front of the cabin and turned to address everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption, but I needed to see this for myself. And thanks to you. He looked at Sophia, Malcolm, the smartwatch passenger, and Ava, who gave a quiet nod from near the rear. I've seen enough. He pulled out his phone again and tapped once. Nia, prepare to issue the following. Lauren Pierce is terminated effective immediately. Ethan Cole is suspended pending review, with a chance for retraining. Ava Lynn is to be promoted for integrity. Claire and Nathan Whitaker are banned indefinitely from Pinnacle flights. He paused. And yes, issue the statement. Include the footage. Sophia was still filming. The light on her camera caught the faint smile at the corner of Jordan's mouth. Not a smile of satisfaction, a smile of clarity. He was no longer guessing at the depth of the rot. He had touched it, measured it, And now, he was cutting it out. As the tension finally cracked, Lauren sat down in the nearest jump seat, silent and shaking. Ethan stared at the floor. Claire folded her arms, but the defiance was gone. Nathan looked out the window, his reflection pale in the glass. Jordan turned to Sophia. "Keep filming," he said. "They need to see the ending." And in that quiet, dimly lit cabin, the story that had begun with a torn ticket was about to ground an entire airline. Lauren Pierce pressed her emergency intercom button. "Cabin security request. Passenger in 2A is refusing to comply and is creating a disturbance," she said in a firm tone, her voice projecting into the quiet tension of the first-class cabin. But the words didn't land the way she expected. They didn't draw gasps or support from the other passengers. Instead, the energy shifted, visibly, audibly. The cameras were already rolling, and the eyes of the cabin weren't on Jordan Hayes as a threat. They were on her. Sophia Alvarez didn't lower her phone. In fact, she stood up now, facing the aisle head-on, camera trained squarely on Lauren. "You've just lied on the record," she said flatly. "There is no disturbance, no threat. The only thing happening is exposure." Malcolm Reed rose once more from his seat and positioned himself just a few feet from Jordan, not in a confrontational stance, but solid and alert. "I'm former federal air marshal," he said calmly, raising his ID wallet just enough for the nearby passengers and crew to glimpse. "And I can assure you, this man has presented no security concern. None." The murmur of passengers swelled. No longer quiet whispers, but frustrated comments and outraged disbelief. From the rear of the cabin, Ava Lynn stepped slightly forward, torn between her flight duty and her growing discomfort. She glanced at Lucas Wong, who stood rigid near the galley. Their eyes met. She gave the smallest nod. "Yes, this is wrong." And Lucas looked down, guilt stirring visibly on his face. Meanwhile, Jordan hadn't moved. His hands were still calmly clasped in front of him, his breathing steady, his voice unused since the firings. But now he spoke again. "Security will be arriving soon. Let's make sure they hear everything. Word for word." He turned to face Lauren, who remained rooted in place, defiance flickering in her features. "Before they do, I have a question. When exactly did you decide a passenger's appearance meant more than their confirmed reservation?" Lauren scoffed. "This isn't about appearance, sir. It's about protocol. This seat was overbooked. Mistakes happen." "And Claire Whitaker's $700 tip was also a mistake?" Jordan asked. Eyes steady, the cabin fell quiet again. Claire, now visibly flustered, crossed her arms and turned toward the window. Nathan was no longer smirking. His eyes were locked on the aisle floor. Calculating, Sophia stepped in. "Passengers have the right to know the truth. And since you're all watching, let me show you something else." She tapped her phone screen, and a projection feed, mirrored to her tablet, showed the newly leaked whistleblower documents. "This," she said, holding it high, "is a falsified bias log from Pinnacle Air's internal system. One of many that was scrubbed clean before reviews. Every time someone like Jordan filed a complaint, it was erased. The logs were coded to automatically hide cases labeled disruption, a category Lauren used more than any other flight lead in the system." The screen displayed page after page of complaint metadata, dates, crew IDs, and remarks. And Lauren's name appeared more than 37 times. "Are we still pretending this is a misunderstanding?" Sophia asked the cabin. "Or are we ready to admit this is a pattern?" Jordan stepped beside her. "This isn't just about me, or this seat. This is about a company I've spent years building and watching slide into patterns I no longer recognize. When we started cutting DEI programs last year, I was told it would be temporary, that passengers didn't notice, but passengers did notice. The crew noticed, Reddit noticed, and now, so will the world. Ethan Cole, who had been silent since his suspension was announced, finally spoke. His voice was shaky. She told me to flag his record before takeoff. I didn't want to. I knew it was wrong. He looked at Jordan. But I was afraid. The union's been breathing down our necks about seniority. I was told I'd lose hours if I didn't follow orders. Jordan nodded slowly. I believe you, and that's why you're not fired. But fear can't justify silence anymore. Not after this. Just then, a ding from Sophia's phone made her eyes widen. She held it up, scanning a new message. The union's issued a warning to Lauren, she said. If she's terminated without a hearing, they'll threaten a walkout. But guess what else? The same union leader was copied on every one of those falsified complaints, and now we have proof they suppressed them internally. She turned her screen around again, showing a chain of emails forwarded to Pinnacle's legal team. We just crossed into corporate corruption. The cabin stirred again. Passengers now stood in the aisles. Some of them clapped, some whispered. A woman in 1F muttered, "This is why I stopped flying with this airline." Malcolm turned toward Jordan. "You ready?" he asked. Jordan gave a half smile. "Almost." He turned to Lucas. "What about you?" Lucas took a deep breath. "I was scared," he said. "I thought I'd lose everything. But after seeing this, I'm done staying quiet." He tapped his badge and added, "If you need someone to help rebuild this airline the right way, I'm in." Then Ava stepped forward, voice trembling but clear. "I sent those logs to Malcolm. I took screenshots and sent them anonymously. I didn't want to get anyone fired. I just wanted someone to care." Jordan looked at her with quiet recognition. "And you did. You cared more than most people in this company ever have. You saved us." Ava's eyes filled with tears, but she stood tall. The cabin doors opened. Security stepped on board, led by a gray uniformed supervisor with a tablet. "What's going on here?" he asked. Voice clipped. Lauren stepped forward to answer, but Jordan raised a hand. "I'll take it from here," he said. He handed over his Pinnacle Air CEO ID. "I'm the highest-ranking officer on this aircraft, and I'm invoking executive authority to remove Lauren Pierce from duty effective immediately. Any attempt to obstruct this decision will result in further review by our legal department." The supervisor blinked, took the ID, scanned it, then looked at Lauren. "Ma'am, we'll need you to come with us." Lauren didn't resist. Not anymore. As she stood and walked slowly toward the exit, she turned once, just once, toward Jordan. "I really was just trying to help my son," she whispered. Jordan's face softened, but he didn't flinch. "Help him by showing him what accountability looks like." As the door closed behind her, the cabin fell silent again. Outside, snowflakes tapped against the fuselage. Inside, passengers returned to their seats, but everything had changed. Sophia shut off her camera for the first time in 20 minutes. "This is going to change the industry," she said. "Not just because of what happened, but because of how you handled it." Jordan exhaled and sat, not in 2A, but in the aisle, facing the passengers. "We're not done yet," he said quietly. "Not until the whole system sees what's been hiding in plain sight." The dim light above seat 2A flickered again as Jordan Hayes stood, not just as a man denied his seat, but as the rightful owner of the very airline trying to push him out. Every eye in the cabin was fixed on him now, some wide with disbelief, others brimming with vindication. Lauren Pierce was gone, escorted off the plane, but the confrontation wasn't over. Not yet. The mood had shifted. The cabin had transformed into a courtroom in the sky, and Jordan, calm, steady, commanding, was ready to deliver the verdict. He reached into his blazer and pulled out a silver-plated business card, holding it up so everyone could see. The words, Jordan Hayes, Chief Executive Officer, Pinnacle Air, shimmered under the flickering light. Gasps followed. Whispers broke across the cabin like wind rippling across water. Claire Whitaker's smirk collapsed into stunned silence. Nathan looked as if he'd swallowed a stone. Ethan Cole sat stiffly, his eyes pinned to the carpet. Ava Lynn stood straighter, a quiet glow of pride in her expression. Sofia Alvarez kept filming. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Her lens captured everything. "I didn't come here to make a scene," Jordan began, his voice strong but composed. "I came here to see the truth with my own eyes, to feel it, to understand what our passengers go through, especially the ones who look like me." His tone didn't rise, but the weight in his voice dropped heavily onto every shoulder in the cabin. "I bought this ticket, I confirmed this seat, and I was still denied, disrespected, and humiliated, not because of policy, but because of perception." He turned to Ethan. "You knew my name. You saw the ticket. You changed the record. Why?" Ethan's lips parted, but no words came out. His face flushed red with shame. "You didn't do it alone," Jordan continued. "You were pressured, coerced, but you didn't stop it either." Ethan looked down and nodded slowly. "I was scared," he said, barely above a whisper. "I didn't know who you were. I just knew Lauren said you didn't belong. And He trailed off. "You folded," Jordan said, "but you're not fired. Not yet. You're suspended, pending review. You'll go through retraining. If you want to rebuild trust, that's where it starts." Then Jordan turned to Ava. "You could have stayed quiet," he said. "Most do, but you didn't." She looked startled that he was addressing her in front of everyone. I couldn't let it keep happening," she said. "I knew I'd get in trouble, but I thought maybe someone would listen if they saw the truth." "You didn't just speak," Jordan said. "You acted. That's leadership." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded letter, and handed it to her. "This is your promotion, effective immediately. You're now lead service manager, first class division." Her eyes widened, hands trembling slightly as she took the paper. A few passengers began to clap, softly at first, then louder. It wasn't just for Ava, it was for something shifting, something real. Jordan turned his attention to Claire and Nathan last. "You bribed your way into a seat you didn't earn," he said coldly. "And worse, you assumed your money could overwrite my presence." Claire opened her mouth. "We didn't know who you were." "That's the point," Jordan said. "You thought that made it okay." Nathan stood, trying to reclaim some sense of control. "We're stakeholders," he said. "We helped fund Pinnacle's expansion through Stonebridge Capital." Jordan didn't blink. "You just lost that privilege. As of now, you're banned from flying with Pinnacle indefinitely. If you think your stake gives you immunity, try explaining that to the board after I'm done." Nathan sat back down, lips pressed into a thin line. Claire muttered something under her breath, but no one listened. Jordan then stepped forward to address the rest of the cabin. "This wasn't about a seat," he said. "It was about power, about silence, and about what happens when people stop looking away." He held up his phone. "This video, everything you've seen, is going public. I've authorized full release to our legal and PR teams. We won't spin it. We'll own it. Because accountability isn't just for others. It's for us, too." He tapped once. "The footage is live." Sophia stepped beside him. "The view count just crossed 500,000, she whispered. "It's not slowing down." Jordan nodded. "Good." Then he looked down the aisle. Ava, please escort the Whitakers off the plane. Ava hesitated, then turned and walked toward the couple. Claire stood stiffly. We'll be speaking with our attorneys, she hissed. Do that, Ava said, without flinching, but you'll be doing it from the terminal. As the couple left, escorted down the aisle under the watchful eyes of passengers and cameras, Jordan exhaled. The hardest part was over, but the real work had just begun. He turned to Sophia. There's more coming, he said. This isn't just about a flight, it's about a culture. And if we want equity in the skies, we have to start at 30,000 feet and work our way down. Sophia gave him a firm nod. Then let's fly. Just hours after the incident aboard Flight 6472, Jordan Hayes walked into the boardroom of Pinnacle Air's Chicago headquarters, without ceremony, without cameras, without the first-class badge on his chest. What had happened on that plane wasn't just a viral moment. It was a breach, a rupture in the values the company claimed to hold. Seated at the long mahogany table were 12 executives, most of whom had seen the footage before their second cup of coffee. Some looked pale, others defensive. One, CFO Randall Keene, stared blankly at his tablet, fingers frozen mid-scroll. Jordan didn't slam a file on the table. He didn't shout. He simply placed his phone face down and began, effective immediately. Lauren Pierce's termination is permanent. The crew misconduct is documented. The bribe, the falsified records, the racial profiling, all of it happened on our watch. I won't ask for a vote on that. No one objected. He continued. Ethan Cole will be suspended with a structured redemption program. The footage, whistleblower chats, and DEI exemption logs show coercion and complicity, but not intent. He gets a path back. If he earns it, again. No opposition. But then came the part that made everyone in the room tense. Ava Lynn is being promoted to lead service manager. And as of today, she will co-chair the new Equity Wings protocol, a company-wide DEI reform initiative that will begin with a full shutdown of Pinnacle's commercial operations for no less than 72 hours. Gasps. You're grounding the airline? A VP blurted. You're talking about millions in revenue. And we're losing millions more every day in trust, Jordan said calmly. Our passengers are watching. So is the world. We need to reset, from the inside out. Randall Keene, still unreadable, finally spoke. And the footage? The posts? Jordan turned his gaze toward him. Already released. We're not spinning this. We're owning it. Fully. Across the table. A junior board member, Anita Sharma, nodded slowly. You're right. We've let this simmer for too long. We've silenced too many internal complaints. We need more than policy updates. We need confession and reform. Jordan gave a quiet nod. Exactly. Then he picked up a folder and slid it across the table. This is a list of executives and legal advisors who knowingly suppressed bias claims submitted over the last 2 years, starting with HR Director Sullivan and ending with Randall. The air in the room went still. Randall's face twitched for the first time. This is nonsense. You think I pocketed DEI funds? No, Jordan said. I know you did. He clicked a remote, and the projector screen behind him flashed open to a series of emails, wire transfers to Shell charities, all under Randall's name, all traced from earmarked diversity funding. We're not debating this, Jordan said. You're fired. Effective immediately. Randall stood, bluster rising. But no one moved to stop Jordan. Security quietly entered and escorted Randall from the room. Jordan took a breath. The Equity Wings protocol will include bias retraining, anonymous complaint systems, diverse hiring panels, and an internal passenger dignity task force. We will audit everything: crew logs, complaint history, seat assignments, bribe suspicions, and union interference. If you're not ready to rebuild this company from scratch, resign now. No one did, in fact. one by one. Heads began to nod. Finally, Anita said, "I think this could be the start of something real." As the meeting wrapped, Nia Brooks entered the room and handed Jordan her tablet. "It's trending everywhere. Sophia's footage, the whistleblower logs, the Whitaker scandal, and a new development." She paused, glancing at the screen. "A boycott campaign, #Ground Pinnacle, travel influencers, civil rights groups, even some partner airlines are distancing themselves." Jordan read the screen, then smiled faintly. "Then it's working. Let them call for a shutdown. We'll do it ourselves, and we'll be the first airline to return with a conscience." Ethan's name came up one last time, Nia added gently. He submitted a written statement. He admitted he nearly deleted the logs under Lauren's pressure, but stopped when he saw Ava watching him. He said she reminded him of what was right. Jordan nodded slowly. "That matters. Keep it on record. It'll be part of his redemption." At the bottom of the statement, a final line caught Jordan's eye. "I can't undo what I did, but I want to learn how to be better. Please give me that chance." Outside the boardroom, cameras waited, but Jordan didn't walk out for applause. He handed Nia the press release. Pinnacle would halt all flights for 3 days, conduct a full audit, and return under the new Equity Wings initiative. Internally, leadership would face review, and externally, passengers would be invited to submit dignity reviews as part of every flight. As Nia sent the statement to media outlets, Jordan stood at the window overlooking the tarmac. For now, the runways would stay still, but when they reopened, they would carry something heavier than passengers. They'd carry change. 6 months later, on a quiet morning at O'Hare, a Pinnacle Air flight lifted into the sky under a new banner, not just in color, but in principle. The once shaken airline, grounded by scandal and public outrage, had risen again under the Equity Wings protocol, reshaped from the inside out. At its helm remained Jordan Hayes, no longer just the CEO who had exposed corruption from the cabin aisle, but now a symbol of what real accountability looked like when fused with empathy. He didn't need media interviews or boardroom photo ops. His leadership had spoken loudest when he stood quietly in a torn ticket's shadow and refused to be erased. Inside the newly retrained first-class cabin of that departing flight, passengers moved with visible ease, welcomed by crew members who had been hand-picked and retrained under Ava Lynn's leadership. Her rise had become one of the airline's most inspiring stories, from junior attendant to Equity Wings division lead. Now overseeing empathy-based service training for over 200 flight teams. She no longer walked the aisle with quiet hesitation. She walked it with purpose, her voice clear, her eyes steady. Ethan Cole, once suspended and nearly fired, now served under Ava's mentorship. His posture remained humble, and though he seldom spoke unless needed, his service was precise, respectful, and driven by a quiet need to rebuild what he had nearly destroyed. He had completed his full redemption program, and every flight was another step forward in proving who he chose to be now. In the terminal lounge, Sophia Alvarez sat by the window, typing a follow-up piece titled "Altitude with Integrity: How One Flight Redefined an Industry." Her original footage had surpassed 12 million views, featured in civil rights roundtables and aviation forums alike. She hadn't just captured a story, she had reignited one. And now, sipping her coffee, she was writing its epilogue. The world hadn't forgotten the flight where Jordan Hayes revealed his identity and reshaped an industry. But what mattered more was how he kept his promise to not let it stop with a viral moment. The Equity Wings protocol had become a model for other airlines. In fact, just 2 weeks earlier, one of Pinnacle's competitors, Skylux International, had quietly adopted a similar internal bias review system after Sophia published another leak exposing their own DEI blind spots. Reform, as Jordan had said, wasn't about revenge, it was about responsibility. Back at Pinnacle's headquarters, Jordan reviewed quarterly reports with Nia Brooks, his longtime assistant whose loyalty had never wavered during the chaos. "Passenger trust has rebounded," she said, pointing to the numbers. "We're still down from peak revenue, but our satisfaction scores are the highest in the airline's history." Jordan didn't smile. He simply nodded. "Money can be recovered. Trust has to be earned every day." On her tablet, Nia displayed a recent dignity review submitted anonymously by a disabled passenger from Denver. It read, "The attendant didn't just help me board. She made me feel like I belonged. First time I've ever cried happy tears on a plane." Jordan read it slowly, then looked out the window. The sky had changed for them, not just in numbers or routes, but in meaning. In a quiet corner of the employee cafeteria, Lauren Pierce's name resurfaced, not in conversation, but in policy. A new clause, quietly named the Pierce Amendment, now prevented crew leads from overseeing complaint audits involving themselves. Her online apology, once viewed by thousands, had since been revealed as a ghost-written PR maneuver. Sophia had exposed it in a separate feature, further emphasizing the importance of sincerity over optics. Jordan never responded publicly to Lauren's post, nor did he mention her again in staff meetings. He didn't need to. Her legacy lived only as a warning. Meanwhile, Malcolm Reed, once just a silent passenger, now a security advisor to Pinnacle's Ethics Oversight Committee, walked the terminal floors weekly, listening to crew and customers alike. "You can't fix what you won't face," he often said. "So let's face everything." He'd turned his own sidelined experience as a former air marshal into purpose, making sure no one in uniform ignored dignity again. The company's transformation extended beyond the cabin. Pinnacle launched a community partnership grant, inspired by Jordan's father's belief that real leadership starts at home. The initiative funded grassroots programs that fought housing discrimination, educational disparities, and access to transportation in underserved neighborhoods, many of which had once been ignored by the airline's expansion plans. The first recipient was a nonprofit run by a former Pinnacle employee who had resigned in protest 3 years prior. Jordan called her personally. "We saw what you tried to change. We're ready to help now." On that December morning, as the plane climbed steadily toward cruising altitude, the captain's voice crackled over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Pinnacle Air. Today's flight isn't just about reaching a destination. It's about honoring the journey we've taken to get here. We thank you for choosing integrity in the skies." In Seat 2A, left respectfully unbooked that day, rested a navy blue boarding pass, framed in clear plastic, pinned quietly against the window, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of what was torn and what was rebuilt. Jordan stood in the back of the cabin, watching the sun rise through the glass. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Change had taken off. And this time, it wasn't coming back down. If you believe respect should never depend on appearance, and that every passenger deserves dignity at 3,000 feet, share this story. Where are you watching from? Have you ever witnessed injustice in plain sight and stayed silent? Today, let's choose to stand, speak, and rebuild. The skies are changing.